why the sheriff knocked on my front door at exactly 8:03 in the morning, and for a second I honestly thought something terrible had happened in the neighborhood. I had just poured my coffee, still half asleep, when I opened the door and saw a uniformed officer standing there holding an envelope with my name on it. Behind him, parked across the street, was a black SUV with the HOA logo printed on the side. That was the moment my stomach dropped, because I already knew this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. The sheriff looked almost uncomfortable as he handed me the papers and said, "Sir, I'm required to deliver this notice. You have 10 days to comply." I asked, "Comply with what?" And his answer still doesn't sound real to me even now. He said, "The Homeowners Association is demanding payment or they will begin legal action to remove unauthorized structures from your property." Unauthorized structures in a house that had been standing for over 100 years. Before I go further, if you enjoy stories where things start normal and slowly turn completely unbelievable, take a second to like and subscribe, because this is Karen Stories Daily. And stories like this show just how far some HOAs will actually go. Your support really helps the channel, and trust me, this situation only gets crazier the deeper it goes. So let me rewind a little, because none of this started with a sheriff. It started with a dream. About a year earlier, I bought a historic mansion on the edge of a quiet American town. The house was built in the early 1920s, a huge place with tall windows, hand-carved wood railings, and a wraparound porch that looked like something from an old movie. Most people saw a falling-apart building. I saw potential. The place had been abandoned for years. Paint peeling, roof damaged, yard overgrown. Friends told me I was crazy for buying it, but restoring old homes had always been something I loved. I spent months researching permits, historic preservation rules, and renovation guidelines before touching anything. I wanted to do everything right. The first few months were amazing. Neighbors would walk by and thank me for bringing the property back to life. People stopped to take pictures as the exterior slowly transformed. I repaired original wood instead of replacing it, restored antique doors, even tracked down period-correct light fixtures. It felt like I was saving a piece of history. That's when the HOA introduced themselves. Technically, the mansion sat inside a neighborhood governed by a homeowners association formed decades after the house was built. I didn't think much of it at first. I received a welcome letter listing normal rules: lawn maintenance, trash pickup schedules, basic community guidelines. Nothing unusual. Then the letters started changing. The first complaint said my exterior paint color was not pre-approved. The funny part was I had restored the original historic color using archived photos from the town library. I politely explained this and even shared documentation. Weeks passed with no response. Then another letter arrived saying my porch repairs violated modern aesthetic harmony. That phrase alone confused me because my house existed long before any of the surrounding homes were built. The neighborhood was full of newer suburban houses, and suddenly my historic mansion didn't fit their image. I attended an HOA meeting hoping to clear things up. That's where I met the board president, a woman named Carol. She smiled politely but spoke in a tone that felt less like conversation and more like authority. She explained the HOA wanted visual consistency across the community. I reminded her the mansion was listed in local historic records. She replied, "That may be true, but community standards evolve." That sentence stayed with me. Over the next few months, inspections increased. I received notices about window trims, mailbox placement, even the style of outdoor lanterns. Every change I made to restore history somehow became a violation. Still, I complied whenever possible because I didn't want conflict. Then came the fine. A letter claiming I owed several $1,000s for unapproved structural restoration. I called immediately, thinking it was a mistake. The management office told me I had altered exterior elements without HOA approval. I explained again that permits were approved by the city and restoration followed historical guidelines. Their response was simple: HOA approval was separate. I filed an appeal and heard nothing for weeks, until the sheriff showed up. Standing on my porch holding that notice felt surreal. According to the document, unpaid fines would allow the HOA to pursue legal enforcement, including removal of non-compliant structures. I asked the sheriff if that meant demolition. He hesitated and said, "I just deliver notices, sir." That was the moment fear turned into anger. I contacted a property attorney that same day. After reviewing everything, he asked one question: "Did they ever formally deny your renovation applications?" I said no, because they never responded. He leaned back and said, "Silence doesn't equal denial. This may not hold up." Meanwhile, neighbors began whispering. Some supported me quietly, saying the HOA had become aggressive lately. Others avoided eye contact entirely. It felt like the entire street was watching a slow-motion conflict unfold. A week later, another letter arrived increasing the fines daily. The amount grew fast, like pressure designed to force compliance. Then Carol herself showed up at my gate with 2 board members. She told me they were giving me one last chance to resolve the situation peacefully. I asked what resolution meant. She said repainting the house in approved colors and replacing restored architectural details with HOA-compliant designs. In other words, erase the history I had just saved. I refused. That decision changed everything. Within days, I received notice of a scheduled enforcement inspection. My lawyer advised me to document every interaction, so I installed cameras around the property. And that turned out to be important, because what happened next shocked even my attorney. An HOA contractor arrived and began measuring parts of my porch without permission. When I confronted him, he claimed he was preparing estimates for corrective removal of work legally permitted by the city. My lawyer immediately filed a response challenging the fines and demanding proof of authority. The HOA responded by escalating, claiming unpaid penalties now exceeded the cost of legal action. Then came the second visit from law enforcement, not aggressive, but official enough to make things feel serious. Papers were filed requesting enforcement through court. That's when the story entered part 2, because the deeper we dug into HOA records, the more the situation started falling apart for them. My attorney discovered the HOA bylaws had exemptions for pre-existing historic structures clauses added decades earlier specifically because of properties like mine. Somehow, the current board ignored or misunderstood those rules. We requested a formal hearing. The meeting was packed. Neighbors filled the room, many hearing details for the first time. My lawyer presented city permits, historical documentation, and HOA bylaws showing my restoration was allowed. Carol argued the board had authority to reinterpret standards. Then the turning point. Panned. Another homeowner stood up and revealed they had also been fined unfairly but were too afraid to fight it. Suddenly more voices joined in. Complaints poured out about selective enforcement and intimidation. The atmosphere shifted fast. The HOA's attorney requested a recess. When the meeting resumed, their tone had changed completely. Instead of threats, they proposed mediation. Weeks later, the fines were withdrawn entirely. The HOA agreed to update guidelines protecting historic homes and reimbursed part of my legal costs. The enforcement action was dismissed before reaching court. Carol resigned shortly after. Today, the mansion stands fully restored, brighter than it has looked in decades. People stop to admire it again, not as a problem but as a landmark. And every time I sit on that porch, I remember how close it came to being forced into compliance with rules that never should have applied in the first place. The biggest lesson I learned is simple. Authority sounds powerful until someone checks whether it's actually valid. If you made it this far, I want to know what you think. Was the HOA protecting community standards, or did they go way too far trying to control something they didn't understand? Drop your opinion in the comments because I read every single one, and your thoughts might appear in a future Karen Stories daily video. And if this story surprised you, share it with someone who lives in an HOA, because situations like this happen more often than people realize.